Hi, everyone. I'm Leah Spector, Senior Brand Manager at Ecommerce. Thank you for joining the second episode of our live show, where we'll talk about e-commerce news, trends, and e-commerce experts, and more. This week, our teams are in Las Vegas for Grocery Shop 2022, where 4,000 grocery and CPG professionals are gathered to learn the latest in all the CPG innovations. If you're there in Vegas, stop by and see our team at booth 1015. To celebrate Grocery Shop, I'm excited to have Dan Fertig, BigCommerce VP of Agency Partnerships, here on the show, sharing his latest insights into the industry, selling online today and the future. Dan, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure, Leah. I have to say, it is a pleasure to be here, but seeing the pictures come out of Grocery Shop, I'm having FOMO not being in Vegas this week, but we'll make it work.
I know Vegas conferences are always a blast. Let's get into the topics. And if you're watching online, thanks for joining us. Feel free to tell us where you're joining from and drop your questions in the chat, and we may answer them live on the show today. Getting into the content, what's the general state of the consumer packaged goods industry?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There has never been a more dynamic moment in the consumer packaged goods industry, and I don't say that just because of the general macroeconomic forces happening right now. Rising inflation, rising interest rates, war in Europe, rising gas prices. Are we in or out of a pandemic? And there are massive macro events happening in the world that are impacting the industry. But even on a micro level, in the industry specifically, there is as much happening as ever before in the space. Two of the biggest impacts that we're seeing, of course, COVID aside, are, number one, it used to be 5 to 10 years ago, to your point, like it used to be what shelf space did I have at a big box retailer or a grocer in order to move my product? That is being disrupted. Even the largest consumer packaged goods companies, which still control the market, are seeing that shift happening, which is why you're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the space as well, trying to keep from being disrupted. I think direct to consumer CPG sales totaled over $21 billion in 2021. That's more
Wow.
than double from 7 or 8 years prior. So that growth has been dramatic in the space. The second major shift that we're seeing is the shift in advertising, right? Brand advertising, what impact does that have on actual product purchases anymore? How are we measuring that? The death of cookies from a customer acquisition standpoint.
Not the cookies you eat, right?
Not the cookies you eat, although that does fall into the
Right.
category technically. It's, the disruptors in the space have had a long history of search and social paid advertising to try to gain market share and gain consumer interest. And even the disruptors now are being disrupted. So they're needing to think about what is their next move. How do they differentiate their brand? How do they reduce customer acquisition costs? How do they grow their product catalog to increase profitability of customers? So the incumbents in the industry are being challenged in ways like never before, and now even the disruptors in the industry are being challenged in ways like never before as well. So it's a really dynamic time in the industry.
Absolutely. And even with all of these like challenges and changes and disruptions, we've learned, of course, after COVID, it's not a surprise, but groceries in the top 5 categories of what people are shopping for right now. We learned that in our consumer trends report, which you can find online. So knowing that kind of shift in behavior, why should a CPG or food and bev brand consider selling online or going D2C?
Yeah, part of it is what I talked about quite a bit, which is it's no longer about how you want to sell to consumers, right? It's about how consumers choose to buy.
Mm,
I joke all the time that 5 years ago we all thought Amazon was a marketplace and Meta was although it was Facebook 5 years ago, is an ad platform. Now, right? Meta is a marketplace just as much, and Amazon is just as much of an ad platform.
absolutely.
And so the way that consumers are choosing to buy is different, and the way that you need to reach that consumer is different. And so some of the major benefits I tend to bucket into 5 key areas anytime I'm talking to a customer or prospect about why and if they should think about a direct to consumer strategy. The first is customer data. Okay, if you're still, if you're still not thinking about how you are going to grow your relationship with a consumer and how you are going to be able to talk to them and adapt to how they like to buy, you're missing out on an opportunity to learn more about that consumer. And that can be, if you're a multi category packaged goods company, that might be my child is wearing diapers today, but needs pull-ups tomorrow. And after that, they might still need the paper towels because they're, eating with their own fork and knife and spilling a lot more, right? And so the more you know about a household and the more you know about a consumer, the more you can sell products and more of those products across different categories, right? So the ability to personalize messaging, the ability to own that relationship with the customer has never been more important because all of the disruptors that I described, those digitally native brands that are selling direct to consumer, they have a data advantage over the multi-billion-dollar large brand companies, right? The second is being agile, right? If you have that direct to consumer channel, you have the ability to test and learn. What do I mean by that? You can test and learn new products. You can have a one-to-one conversation where you're building a loyalty program where anyone in that loyalty program gets a dedicated product built specifically for them. It could be a really neat collaboration. It could be a limited supply or a limited run on an item that gets sold out very quickly. You can test and learn, test new markets, test new products, and scale successes out. If you're reliant on retailers and distributors to do all that for you, your ability to test and learn is very quickly reduced and diminished. You can also create buzz beyond traditional ad spend. So we have a CPG customer that sells direct to consumer on BigCommerce today, and they ran a probably very expensive Super Bowl ad with one Jason Alexander. I am old enough, you might not be, but I'm
Oh,
old
I
enough
love
to
Seinfeld. I'm a
okay.
huge
Don't
Jason
even
Alexander fan.
I don't need to explain Seinfeld to you then, hopefully not the audience as well. Right, where they were running a commercial, he was the spokesperson in the ad. They then, weeks before the Super Bowl ad was running, decided to sell sweatshirts with his likeness on those sweatshirts tied to the commercial. They were able to show people watching the commercial, out of home advertising, or I should say, traditional brand advertising, tie that to spend. They were then able to capture all of those customers' information.
It's great.
And build a relationship with that end customer. So the ability to test and learn, scale, tied out of home is an important one. The third is omnichannel, right? Like I said, who amongst us, raise your hand, although I can't see any of you, hasn't purchased something at 11:30 p.m. while scrolling on Instagram?
I definitely have.
Guilty. So, right, the way we buy is different. If you can direct that individual back to your own branded site, you can then control that narrative, right? You can spin up employee stores. If you sell perishable goods, rather than diminish your brand and have those products dying on a shelf at a third party retailer, you can spin them up at a deep discount on your employee store and reduce your inventory and reduce your perishable goods pretty quickly. So there are a lot of different use cases, and people are buying on marketplaces. 2/3 of purchases still happen on marketplaces today. Wow. A third happen on branded sites. When I mean commerce specifically. Sure. So you can have a point of view around what marketplaces you want to test and learn, both domestically here in the US as well as internationally. So you can control the omni-channel narrative. Doesn't preclude you from still selling through retailers and distributors.
Not at all. I know we have for example, obviously we have our Amazon integration. Walmart Marketplace is a great place to sell CPG. I think that's probably the leading category on Walmart Marketplace, and we have a lot of brands finding a lot of success there too.
Yeah, we have deep integrations with Target for Target Plus, Walmart, like absolutely, and we're seeing customers capitalize on that in a pretty meaningful way. And you as a brand, you want to tie those two strategies together, right? You've got your omni-channel strategy, your distributor strategy, and you want to think about how you're differentiating that direct to consumer, right? Does a subscription make sense? Should you be doing Instagram Live? If you sell beauty and cosmetics product, you've traditionally sold through retailers. Should you be doing a spokesperson or the product developer talking about the best ways to use this foundation?
Yeah, why not?
There are great ways to own that conversation, and if you attend the session, you get a discount, right? You can be smarter about the promotions. You can be smarter about margin protection in that direct-to-consumer relationship in a way that's really hard to do through a reliance entirely on retailers and distributors.
And then not only using that data to reach customers more effectively, then you can take that data and inform some of your wholesale or retail strategies as well. Exactly. You learn what your customers like.
Exactly. There's I heard a story of a brand that was entirely reliant on retailers, and it is a product that one of their products is a fairly risque, intimate product. And what they found was they never stocked that product in certain geos. And what they found was when they sold direct to consumer, that product disproportionately was purchased from consumers in those geos.
A little privacy, right?
Meaning those consumers craved, yeah, privacy and discretion in that purchase. They didn't want to walk into a retailer store and purchase those products. So it's a way to really think holistically about your product mix and your channel strategy as well.
100%. Thank you. That was all great information. What are some of the challenges food and bev or CPG brands might consider or might encounter, when they're trying to sell direct to consumer?
Yeah. So I would say, I tend to bucket the challenges into two major areas. The first I'll call, and they're semi-related, business and operational. And the next, the major bucket is like kind of their tech stack. And again, they're semi-related, right? So when I think about business and operational, this is going direct to consumer is very hard to do if you do not have organizational buy-in to do it, right? So you need, organizational buy-in. You're going to need to think about, you know, what does my digital team look like? What does my SEO strategy look like? What is my current marketing mix? And does that need to change on a direct to consumer basis? What does fulfillment look like, right? Shipping on a pallet to, a Walmart looks very different than shipping an individualized box to a consumer's home. The cool part about that is you can control that pre and post purchase experience for the customer more if you're direct to consumer than through retailers, right? You can drop samples in the box, surprise and delight,
Mhm.
right? If you own that
Little
relationship,
notes.
but you really, from an operational standpoint, you really do need to be thinking about these things. What does pricing strategy look like? Right? Are you beholden to certain pricing with retailers where
Mm.
they have to have the lowest advertised price?
Mhm.
Customer service looks different selling to wholesalers than it does to a direct customer. So you need to think about how you're organizing your customer service department. That's more like, are we from a business, are we aligned to be able to do this? From a tech stack standpoint, you might need to start to think about things like customer data platforms. You might need to think about your e-commerce platform. Can it scale? Can you start small and grow? Order management. What fulfillment providers do I need to thinking about that I don't use today? If I'm not great at shipping a single product to a single customer today, there are experts in the BigCommerce ecosystem, third-party logistics companies that do that very well. You need to be having that conversation. Do we have a social following? Should we have a social following? The answer is yes, but if you're a direct-to-consumer business, it becomes even more important given the rise of social commerce. And then, like I said, customer service looks very different as well. So there are customer service applications like a Zendesk, like a Gorgeous, that are a little bit more, consumer oriented than you might be used to, working with 100 different retailers,
Yeah,
for
you just have to
example.
think about the end user experience a little more carefully.
Exactly. Pre and post purchase
All right,
as
pre and
well.
post. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about a brand like Method. I know them for their soaps. They're really popular. In 2019, they decided they wanted to explore D2C after having only sold through
Yep.
retailers. They evaluated platforms. They chose BigCommerce. I'm really excited about that. They launched their first version of their site in just 3 months, which is incredible. What's happened since?
Yeah. So selfishly, I was very excited when they signed because I was a big customer of theirs. So I always like to purchase from BigCommerce customers generally. It has been a wonderful partnership with them. They're the type of organization that is forward thinking. They have a couple of different groups within the company that think direct to consumer, and broader parts of the organization are starting to come around to that. Um, with Method specifically and SCJ specifically, I mean, they're now selling direct to consumer across 7 brands
Wow.
in 15 countries using BigCommerce.
Wow.
The really cool thing that they're doing is they think about bundling in a very creative way. So as they've gotten more information on the consumers, they say, well, if we sell, um, Caldrea on one hand, right? And we know that this family now, because they're a customer of ours, and we've had them, we've incentivized them to complete surveys about themselves through opt-in first-party data. We now know they have young ones in the home. I want to be able to bundle Baby Ganix products into that shipment or into that transaction. And so it's when I say it's a dynamic time in the CPG space, 10 years ago, there was a brand manager at all of these companies who only cared about their own brand. They had their own budget, their own marketing line items. And I think even the biggest companies in the world are starting to think about, how do we cross sell? How do we bundle? how do we own more of the, the customer's wallet share, right? I mean, CPG is generally a resilient, even in a recession. I don't know if I'm allowed to say we're in a recession, but a lot of people would say we are in one. Even in a recession, it's a resilient category. So if consumers are going to continue to spend, how do we gain more wallet share? They're thinking strategically that way, and a lot of brands do not. It is the competitive advantage from both branding and the product category blend that those big companies have, and they're wielding that right now in a pretty smart way.
Okay, so if you're a company and you have, multiple brands, think really cohesively, think across brands. How can you cross promote?
Correct.
That's all great advice. Last question for you, Dan.
Yeah.
What should CPG brands be thinking about or when they want to get started selling online?
Yeah, I would start to say build a plan. No, it's probably going to need to be adjusted. You want to have organizational buy-in. This can't just be a passing thing. Having said that, don't be afraid to test and learn. Set KPIs, test and learn, and scale from there. You do not have to boil the ocean with some massive digital transformation and have the start with the center of excellence and do all the things at once. Have a plan, test and learn, scale what's working, share those learnings across other groups, evaluate your tech stack, evaluate your partners, and understand, do we have what it takes to be able to start to sell direct to consumer today? We have a great ecosystem of partners. Quick plug to our agency partner ecosystem, which I help manage.
They're the best.
We have incredible partners who have done this before for some really smart brands, and a wealth of information to help you get started if you're not sure exactly where and when and how to start. So come find me, daniel.fertig@bigcommerce.com. Find BigCommerce. We'll point you in the right direction if you're interested in having that conversation.
Absolutely. We would love to have you on the platform. We have one question from the audience. Pratesh from YouTube. Thank you for this question. How can I start an e-commerce business with you in India? Do we have support in India yet?
We do have support in India. I will actually be out in Delhi and Bangalore, October 31st through mid-November.
So exciting.
Servicing Indian merchants and partners. So answer is we do it. And in fact, we have one of the largest consumer packaged goods companies in the world selling in India on BigCommerce today.
Awesome. So Pratesh, this is your guy. Reach out to Dan.
Thank you for the question.
Thanks. And yeah, Dan, thanks so much for joining us today. This is a really exciting industry, and I'm excited to hear where it goes. If you're at grocery shop, stop by our booth at 1015 to see our teams. We have breakfast tacos right now until noon Mountain Time and a proper Vegas martini bar from 2 to 5. So we'd love to see you. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Breakfast tacos and martinis. What more can you ask for?
That's
Cheers.
it.
Thank you so much.